Hey, I'm Anna, and today I'm going to make sure that we're recording. We're going to be talking to you about locality sensitive hashing. So locality sensitive hashing was first proposed in 1998 by two gentlemen whose names I will hilariously butcher. Oh gosh. It's a pretty simple concept, so it's kind of interesting that no one had proposed it until 1998. But yeah, so locality sensitive hashing relies on something called hashing, which I'm assuming everyone has heard of. But a hash is when you take a particular object and you run it through a hash function, and the output is something completely different. So in regular hashing, we would hope that the output for everything is going to be vastly different, meaning something like if we had two documents that were 1 byte apart, that when we ran these through hash functions, the same hash function, you would get an output that was completely different. But locality sensitive hashing relies on the idea that when you put two similar documents, like this document that's 1 byte apart from this document, through the same hash function, that you get something that's kind of similar. Because if they're kind of similar, we can group them together. So with locality sensitive hashing, you would use a hash function, h, in which you would get a similar looking output for similar looking documents. Awesome. So a little bit of definition to go over. You're going to need a few different things to do locality sensitive hashing. One of which is going to have to be a way for you to identify similarity between documents. So the book uses something called SIM between data point A and data point B, but I feel like that's really counterintuitive. So for the premise of this, we're going to use distance because it's way more intuitive. The distance between data point A and data point B will tell us how similar it is. So we need to figure out a particular threshold for similarity between data point A and data point B. Like, what are we interested in? And that's going to depend a lot on your data set. So this particular threshold, we're going to call theta. And that needs to be chosen for every locality sensitive hash. So an interesting little caveat for this is that not all similarity measures can be used to build locality sensitive hashes. The book uses the example of the dice coefficient overlapping coefficient. You would not be able to use a locality sensitive hash for that. So as a more formal definition, a hash function H is a function that maps every document in the data set, presuming similarity between documents in the way that the probability of collision P is higher for similar documents. So to draw that out, and this is a little bit different than the book because we're using distance and not similarity. And this is going to be if the distance of data point A and data point B are less than or equal to our theta that we chose. And then this is going to be if the distance between data point A and data point B are greater than or equal to gamma and then our theta. And more formally, this is going to be where 0 is less than or equal to gamma was less than 1 and 0 are probability 2, probability 1, and then 1. So it's a pretty intuitive definition. We're basically saying that we would like our hashes to produce really similar outputs. I'll leave that on the screen. So how do we start with a locality sensitive hash? And we do that by hashing. So we have our particular H selected. And what we're going to do is take our data set. And that's going to data point A, data point B, to data point N. And we are going to take every single one of them and hash it. And we're going to assign it to a particular bucket based on that hash. So we're going to go through and similar documents are going to go into similar buckets, hopefully. So let's say data point A and data point B are really similar. They are going to be mapped into there. Awesome. That's easy enough, right? So there is a little bit of a flaw with this particular methodology. Unfortunately, you can have both false positives and false negatives. A false positive is going to be when two dissimilar data points are mapped to the same bucket. So can we do anything about this? Yeah, this can be completely eliminated, and I'll go over how to eliminate that. Can be. And false negatives. And this is when two similar data points are mapped to two different buckets. There's not too much that can be done about this, but it can be minimized. And we can do that. One way specifically would be to have k different hash tables. And randomly selecting distinct hash functions from the same family that map to the same set of bucket keys. Now that I've gone over how to minimize the false negatives, I'm going to talk a little bit about false positive management. So a false positive is when we have two dissimilar objects mapped to the same bucket. So the next step for locality sensitive hashing would be to check if the objects contained in those buckets are going to be similar. So we're going to go through our bucketing. Just go back to a previous example, and we have our. So what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through all of our bucketing, and we're going to check for each data point, are the other data points in that bucket similar? And we're going to use that by theta. So if it violates theta, it shouldn't be in that bucket, and they're dissimilar. So in this particular case, let's say we are selecting our data point A. What we would do is produce an output where similar data points are included. So if there was a third one, DC, that is dissimilar to A, then that would not be included in this list. So it really mitigates the false positives. So the crux of locality sensitive hashing is going to come from our ability to choose a proper K, which, if we go back, oh gosh, it's our different hash tables. And our theta, which is how similar or distance we want our points to be. And Bradley's going to talk about a few examples.
Okay, thank you, Anna, for